With regards to landing callbacks, so yeah, the question is, do you have any suggestions on landing interviews or callbacks? Can you share on that? With respect to interviews, it really depends upon the kind of data science role that you're applying for. There's typically product data science roles and applied data science roles. For product data science roles, you ought to be focusing a bit more on SQL and case study rounds. And for applied data science, you have to focus a bit more on SQL, data structures, algorithms, and a bit of system design. Everything's covered in the guide. And in terms of landing callbacks, it's basically 50% your resume and projects, and 50% who refers you. So in terms of resume and projects, again, there are guides on TopMate that go pretty deep into what kind of projects you can choose for different types of data roles. And in terms of getting referrals, it's mostly like a numbers game. Just utilize your LinkedIn network as much as possible. Send out connection requests. Be uh, basically very direct with those connection requests. And it usually takes like 2 3 weeks of sending connection requests to get a response from somebody. So be prepared to like put in some time. And yeah, those are the two main things: resumes, projects, and referrals. Those would be like 50-50 reason why you would land a callback. If you're doing a bachelor's in data science, and if you're doing a master's, it does depend a little bit. Like masters won't necessarily improve your callback rate a huge amount. It primarily depends upon your portfolio, or essentially the products that you've done. It also depends a little bit on the country. I feel like in India, a master's does help quite a bit, but in US, it's gonna be more about your network and your portfolio. It's been difficult in getting those referrals. Should we ask it upfront or build connection and then ask for referrals? Usually, I my approach has been ask referrals for people who are somewhat active on LinkedIn. So engage with their content a little bit, and then be direct and within the connection request, ask them for a referral. I feel like that sort of works out fairly well. Um, so I would more often say be direct, because you only have about 2 weeks from when the job is posted to get a referral. So I typically play the numbers game, which is like, for one company, I send out at least 10 to 15 referrals for that specific company. I mean, the referral, I mean, like connection requests for that particular company, so that at least one person responds. As long as you have somewhat a decent LinkedIn profile, and you have at least one project that is relevant to the role, more often than not people will respond. More often than not, as in more often than not, one person in those 15 people that you reached out to will respond. Do they know? If they do not post content, how to engage? Again, if they don't really have any kind of activity on LinkedIn, it's very less likely that they'll even see the connection request. So try to only reach out to people who have some kind of activity in the last 3 months or not. Like LinkedIn will show you when you land up on their profile whether they've had any activity in the last few months. If they haven't, probably not a good idea to reach out to them. Even in the US, most job descriptions have master's PhD requirements. Would you still recommend to apply? Yeah, like I mentioned, master's definitely helps, but more than that, what helps is gonna be your portfolio and your network. If you're in a bachelor's, if you just have a bachelor's, I would say aim for a data analyst role, and then sort of work yourself into a data science role. If you're not interested in doing a master's, or if you feel like master's is just too expensive, if those are the reasons why, those are some that like very good reasons not to pursue a master's as well. So those are the reasons. Try a data analytics role. Data analytics roles are a little bit more receptive to freshers, a little bit more receptive to folks who have like just a bachelor's degree. So try for that and then transition into a data science role. Data analyst, as in data analyst, business intelligence engineer, any of those analytics roles where you primarily focus a bit more on SQL, dashboarding, and statistics. What are the skills that would be important to have working as a data scientist? There's no specific technology, but in terms of like skills, I would say for a data scientist, for an applied data scientist, it's going to be fitting and tuning models, productionalizing those models, and being able to do feature engineering data analysis. And finally, being able to error analyze and improve those models. So those are the four key traits that typically most hiring managers look for. So building projects around those four key traits. Again, it's covered in the data portfolios to increase callbacks guide on TopMate that you can download for free. Check out that guide. It pretty much covers the main skills for all different types of roles: data analyst, product data science, applied data science, AI engineer. All those four roles are covered in the guide. Just try going through that. While having projects related to domain or industry that I'm targeting, should I just focus on 2 to 3 industries? If not, how should I go about it? I wouldn't necessarily. It again depends on what kind of network you have. I don't think like you can build really high quality projects if you don't have a mentor or somebody who's working in that business domain. Like if you just take a Kaggle data set and try to go at it yourself, more often than not, you won't really learn anything specific to the domain. So more often than not, that's why I advise people to find mentors. um, because yeah, most of the common problems that people go for, like forecasting, just because you forecast an appropriate value doesn't really mean much, because even after that there's a lot of decision making that goes into it. So like any kind of project that you do, if you want to focus in on an industry, if that is your approach, find a good mentor. And if you're going to be doing projects that are targeting an industry, typically that's going to take time. Like you're looking to invest like somewhere between 1 to 1, yeah, 1 to 1.5 months in doing a project, in which case targeting 2 to 3 industries might be basically just too much time you'll be spending in the job market. So I would probably say um, target projects that you can showcase a breadth of skills, so large scale prediction problems, forecasting, NLP. Having one of these as sort of a breadth of skill set representation is good in your portfolio. And then maybe look at one industry. Fintech is a decent industry. It sort of applies to most companies, and it sort of extends over like most of the predictive modeling that you do there, fraud detection. More often than not, though, if you have like somewhat decent experience in those models, it can transfer across. And it's also an industry that kind of has maintained its hiring amount over the years. Healthcare is booming. E-commerce has sort of, I would say, decreased its hiring post the pandemic high. So again, pick your industry, work with a mentor, make sure you do deep dive into industry projects. Same job descriptions have years of experience requirements to internships. Internships don't count in years of experience. It's only full-time roles. Would you still recommend to apply for these jobs even without full-time experience? It depends. If it's open for freshers, in the sense that if they're saying bachelor's with X amount of years of experience, or master's, then it's typically open for freshers. And yeah, even if that you don't necessarily meet that criteria, there's no harm in applying. If they say like 3 to 5 years of experience, typically they won't consider freshers. Every other role, again, there's no harm in applying. You have a shot as long as you have a good referral and good set of projects. Is there a hard and fast rule about if requirement states 1 year of experience, then it can't be internships that's counted? Uh, Typically, no, internships aren't counted. Again, if you have an internship at like a name company, a name company being like FANG or FANG level company, it might help in getting a call back. But at the interview, again, it really depends upon how you perform on the interview. So it if you have an internship at a name company, then maybe it could help you landing a callback, even if you don't have that minimum experience. As in, again, if you have an internship, zero experience, and you're targeting an entry level role, but the internship was at a name company, then you have a chance of getting a callback. But if you don't have any experience, you have an internship but it's not at a name company, then focus more on your projects and focus on getting a good referral. That's going to be helpful in getting a call back. Would you still recommend to apply to those jobs in with a full-time experience? Yeah, I think I mentioned that. Now that you talked about hiring process cycle, can you walk through that? Last time when I heard of callbacks, it was pretty decent in late Jan, but after that it's been difficult. Uh, Hiring cycles, typically we were going through a peak in hiring. Now that it's spring break, this is like primarily in US. So now that it's spring break, you can expect maybe responses to be get delayed a little bit. But usually, if there are any roles left over, you'll see them getting filled out probably by end of March, early April. This is for like summer internships or summer starting roles. After April, hiring, I would say, sort of slows down or plateaus, and it starts picking up again. I would say maybe August, September. But it again depends a little bit on how, if there is like any further hype in the market, or further anything that comes out in the market that causes some kind of disruption, in which case there may be hiring. But usually hiring sort of slows down around now. There may be like some roles that might be filled out, but after April, um, you'll see a few roles maybe here and there, but not as much as we have seen thus far. And then it's going to start picking up again later in the year, probably around August, September. For the study sessions, it seemed like everybody just wanted a recorded session on YouTube, and I feel like there's already a lot of content like that out on YouTube. I'll definitely be trying to host more sessions like that, but it again depends upon how many people are interested and how many people join. We'll see. We'll see, like maybe in a month or two, based on the bandwidth I have. Working on a few more workshops with break into data. Let's see how those turn out, and probably later, like June, July, just before the next hiring wave, I'll try and set up a few more sessions. I have 2 years of experience in e-com industry. All the callbacks I got is only from that industry. How can I make my resume competitive for other industries for data science analytics roles? It's again basically just projects. Find a good mentor in the industry that you want to crack. Set up weekly meetings with them, build projects, ask for their feedback, try and get a bit deeper into that industry in terms of like specifically focus on metrics, data challenges that they have, and how they typically handle monitoring, governance, a few of those aspects. That's going to really add like a bit of depth to your projects, especially when you write about them in your resume, when you talk about them during your interviews. Thanks, Preeti. Thanks. Yeah, I'll definitely take that feedback into consideration. Yeah. Well, tailoring resumes, how do you approach? Sometimes it feels just stuffing more keywords, which does not make sense. How do you go about that? Any thoughts? When it comes to tailoring a resume, I think I've covered that in the guide, but basically uh, I don't necessarily believe in tailoring each and every line in your resume. I would say template out your resumes a little bit. For instance, I had experience mostly in like time series forecasting, NLP, and most of my experience was like in ecom. So I had like a resume that was a bit time series heavy and time series heavy, a bit, I mean, time series heavy with like some breadth of problems in prediction and everything. Another one that has was like NLP heavy with some breadth of problems in like prediction and everything. And another one that was just e-com heavy. It was like different problems in e-com, like an e-com's sales forecasting problem, an e-com anomaly detection problem, an e-com's what was called essentially it was essentially an NLP task in SEMeval. I guess the task doesn't necessarily have a name, but yeah. So different problems within e-commerce. So I had like themed out versions of my resume, and then basically within the skill section, whatever keywords were there in the job description, as long as I knew that particular skill, I would add it into my resume and make sure it matches as is. So if the resume mentioned linear regression, if I had regression analysis in my resume, I would just change it to linear regression. If it had like something like I don't know, large scale data modeling or something, and I knew that, but it wasn't there in my resume, I would add it in, and typically that would help clear any ATS bar, and hopefully the project theme is relevant enough to the role that the recruiter screen also gets cleared. So that's how I see it in my head. I don't, at least the recruiters I've worked with, they don't necessarily sort the resume by highest match with ATS, like the ATS score or anything. They typically just have a like, okay, the resume should at least have like an ATS match of this much, and usually they just pick the resumes from there based on more like referrals and like few other things. Maybe like it depends like from company to company. Some companies do favor like name colleges, some companies do favor like previous name companies, stuff like that. So it does depend a bit. Different recruiters work differently, and usually like they go through your resume, the first two bullets, make sure they're your strongest bullets, and sort of like match the job description as much as possible. That would be like my suggestion. So theme out your resumes, create like 2 to 3 versions, and then whenever you see a JD, just make sure you have all the keywords that you need, assuming that you know those skills, and then apply. And again, try and follow the 2 application strategy as much as possible. Like in the sense that you have a personal email, you apply using that personal email, which is also reflecting on your resume. You apply as you see the job description. when you see the job description, and then within 2 weeks of the job being posted, try and get a referral. And if you can get a referral, apply with like a separate email, and that separate email is reflected in your resume. Some portals do sort of still flag you, in the sense that if your first name and last name is same, they'll say that, hey, you've already applied for that role. Or some portals you have to create a separate account and stuff like that. So be aware of those portals. For those portals, make sure, make a judgment call. Do I think like I can get a referral in the next 2 weeks? It depends upon how fast you've been getting referrals so far, and if you have like already somebody in that company. So based on that, do you think you can get a referral within 2 weeks of the job being posted? If yes, uh, wait for the referral. If not, apply directly. Curious about your approach to handling missing data. What strategies do you typically employ when encountering null values in data sets, and how do you decide which method is most appropriate? It depends upon, I guess, first is sort of understanding what the null data represents, if it's truly sort of missing at random, or if there's like a pattern within missing. So first is like understanding what the null value represents. If the null value is sort of like missing at random, then basically seeing how much, what percentage of data is actually null. If it's like a very small percentage, typically below 1 to 2%, then maybe it can be disregarded. Again, depends upon the size of data that I'm working with. If it can't be disregarded, the basic approach works fairly well, which is like mean for continuous values, mode for categorical values. Try that out, see how it performs. You can try out different imputation strategies from there. But yeah, it's basically like anything else in data science. It's a lot of trial and error. Yeah, it's basically a lot of trial and error. You can also check like the distribution of the data, and based on the distribution, you can figure out what imputation strategies work well. If it follows certain distributions, you can use that information to figure out what imputation strategy would work well. What kind of data projects are you currently working on within Walmart? Can't really talk about it. Um, Basically, within e-commerce space, trying to help fulfill orders better. Let's just say that. I'm currently doing my PhD in scientific computing and have an MS in applied math. I did an internship at a national lab, which is not related to DSNML. Can I mention that as an experience in my resume? I would never say remove any experience that you have. Keep the experience. You can limit it to maybe 1 or 2 lines, because it may not be relevant to the role that you're targeting. But definitely keep that experience. What you can do is you can reorder it so that the projects that are more relevant come first, and maybe your experience comes next. A lot of like, especially like fresh grads, as in like people who are switching from academia to industry, try to keep their projects first, because sometimes the projects may be more apt than any experience that they had. I'm currently a freshman in college majoring in data analytics, and I'm interested in the field. All I need to do is get really good with skills and build resume. What should I do? I'm learning Python and SQL. Yeah, Python and SQL is like a strong foundation. It then depends upon what you want your day to day to look like. If your day to day is more around talking to a lot of people and helping them make business decisions, you're aiming for a product data science role. So then focus on a bit more like what we call metric design and uh, case study rounds to crack interviews, but mainly in terms of like developing skills, focus a bit on primarily on learning statistics, focus on hypothesis testing and A/B testing. Make sure you understand those concepts fairly well. Focus on the foundations of machine learning. You don't need to really get into deep learning, but foundations of ML. And focus on like building like good, insightful, understandable dashboards. So that's sort of like your base for product data science. For applied data science, you need to focus a little bit upon data structures and algorithms for cracking interview rounds. And in terms of like being a good applied data scientist, it's mostly fitting and tuning models. So be very comfortable with machine learning and deep learning. Try and get into one of the domains, NLP or CV. That would be good. And finally, learn one of the cloud platforms, AWS, GCP. As you're getting good at one of them, would really help. In terms of like, in case like you weren't able to jot down everything, there is a guide for data portfolios for data scientists, I mean data roles. It covers like four different types of roles. Check it out. It covers the skills that are required. So hopefully that should give an idea about how to become a specific data role. Also doing side project where I'm collect my online statistics from video game I play, and I'm going to analyze that with pandas numpy in future. Do you recommend analyst builder, lead code? Analyst builder is definitely something that a lot of people especially within like the data analytics space who's targeting the data analytics space. I've seen them use, and I've seen like good feedback. So that's about the best feedback that I can provide. In terms of lead code, again, if you're targeting an applied data science role, what's an applied data scientist? Check out the guides. Everything is free to download, guys. So just check out the guides. If you are targeting an applied data science role, yes, lead code can help. What brings the attention of a recruiter on a resume or on a LinkedIn profile? What skill set and projects can help in those? Again, depends upon the role. More often, the 50% of the reason why you get attention is going to be who refers you. So make sure you have build a strong network and get a good referral. The rest 50%, like you mentioned, is the project. The best way to get attention is to have like a good project industry fit. So if you are doing a fintech project, if you're targeting fintech industry, recruiters are going to notice that. So having a good business domain fit is going to be the first thing that you want to focus on. After that, the second thing, or the second thing that brings a lot of attention, is sort of fitting the breadth of skill sets that hiring managers you try to match. So if you're going for applied data science roles, like I mentioned, it's fitting and tuning models, productionizing those models, feature engineering and data analysis, and doing error analysis and improving those models. Again, all of it's covered in the guide. So it would be those three things: having a good referral, having doing projects in the business domain that the recruiting is happening in, and having a good breadth of skill set. So those are the three in order, I would say. And LinkedIn, same thing. Being able to reflect that in LinkedIn is what's going to help bring attention to LinkedIn. And as long as you have like some kind of activity and you sort of seem like an SME in the space, which basically just means post maybe once a week about what you're learning, that would be more than enough to come across as like a subject matter expert. So just do that, and probably you, if a recruiter is going to be using LinkedIn to know a bit more about the candidate, that would suffice. I want to get started with product analytics and experimentation. Can you put some light on how to get started in the space? Dawn Chu is a good content creator to follow in that space. She has a couple of guides, and I think she has like plenty of content on LinkedIn and in videos in terms of like how to get started. There's like a few books that she recommends, which I also think are good books on online experiments, I think, is one of the book's names. It has like a picture of a blue hippo on the cover. I forget the book name. And yeah, Emma Ding is another content creator who's on YouTube. She has a lot of good content about becoming a product data scientist as well. Data engineering skills required for ML roles nowadays. Data engineering skill sets are a little bit more heavier on um, data modeling, building and maintaining databases, and doing like distributed processing. There is a content creator called Zach Wilson. He would be the best person to know more about what a DE actually needs to know. But uh, are there elements of DE that a data scientist needs to do? I would say no. Like even if even if I'm writing some SQL, or even if I'm creating tables or anything of that sort, I wouldn't say I necessarily need to know as much sort of like DBMS as like a data engineer does. And even when I'm working on actually, if I'm working on distributed processing, yes, I would need to know quite a bit of PySpark. But it's not necessarily the same concepts that a DE needs to know. Mine is more for being able to model and do predictions efficiently. So it's a bit more in line with an MLE role, I would say. So again, I wouldn't say necessarily a lot of overlap with what a DE does. In terms of like engineering skills, yes, data scientists do require a certain amount of engineering skills, especially if you're working in the applied data science domain. Those engineering skills are mostly like productionizing a model. So knowing a good cloud platform, knowing PySpark, knowing some kind of orchestration tool like Airflow, uh, being a bit familiar with the Docker, those are like some engineering skills that are good to know. And if you know like one of the cloud platforms, AWS or GCP, both are the those two are like what I would recommend. They have like a lot of interesting blogs about architecture. So again, a lot of those you don't need to necessarily know in depth. Just a bit of working knowledge about AWS is fine. If you know, if you've worked on Docker for one day, you know enough Docker for to be a data scientist. If you worked PySpark, you need to know a bit. So I would say work on PySpark the longest. Cloud, maybe a week's worth of knowledge is about all you need to work on cloud. Docker one day, and orchestration again one day worth of knowledge is about all you need to know to work on it. So you do need to know a bit of engineering skills here and there, but it doesn't take that much time, I would say, to pick up those engineering skills. Curious about to go to your regression methods and cross validation techniques in your day-to-day work. Which ones have you found most reliable or versatile across different projects? Regression, linear regression itself would be the most versatile one or the most easiest one to test out. Don't really use it that much though. Cross validation again depends upon the kind of data that I'm working with. Nfold is typically what most people use, and I don't see why it wouldn't be a standard unless you're working with some kind of like data with time series to it. Again, and it depends upon how your train and test is gonna, or the data at your train time and the data at your test time is gonna look like. It really depends upon that. So there's no like general one to use. Would you recommend any resources that would be helpful to create good projects? Kaggle would be the best resource. Go to a project that has a fairly large price money and isn't older than maybe 3 or 5 years. Start working on it. The discussion board is going to help you a lot in figuring out what are the good methods and sort of like what you can try out or experiment with it. Every DS question requires different responsibilities to fulfill. How can one do many impactful good projects? Again, breadth of projects, you just need to focus on one large scale, good predictive problem. That itself will form a good foundation. NLP or LLMs, I mean, basically, a good NLP project is going to help you ride that hype wave right now. And forecasting is a good project where you get to use a lot of different data sets and you can explain how the model is working very well, so you can show a lot of like technical understanding there. So those are three good projects that I typically recommend to showcase a breadth of knowledge. And after that, it's primarily just doing projects in your business domain of choice. uh Pavan, you mentioned that I missed your question. I only see two questions from you. One is missing data, which I think I answered. Regression methods, I mentioned linear regression is the most robust one. Cross validation, like I mentioned, it depends on the data. There is no reliable or versatile one. It really depends upon the kind of data that you're working with, kind of problem. Where can you find the data portfolios guide? It should be on top, mate. Let me just check. Yep, this one. No, no, no issues. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that came in thus far. Thanks for joining, everyone. We will definitely continue to have FAQs here and there and resume reviews down the line. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you guys aren't already following me on LinkedIn, make sure you check out my LinkedIn profile as well. There's a decent amount of content. We're covering case studies specifically this week and probably a bit of next week as well. So hopefully that'll help prep you guys for case study rounds as well. Thanks. Thanks everyone for joining. Are you going to make? Oh yeah, this video I think automatically goes on to YouTube. So yeah, you should be able to see it. Thanks all. Bye.